Hello there, my name is Sixo, but more on that later, as now it's time for a brand new unboxing video. And as usual, this one comes courtesy from the fine folks at TF Source. So can I suggest that you head on over to their site and treat yourself? You deserve it. Now we're taking a look at another product from Ocular today, and I have to say they've been on a bit of a roll recently, with their Combaticons and their Soltus figure all having really impressed me. Well, now it's time to mix it up a little bit with something from their remix line. This is RMX-03 Volture and 04 Buzzard. Let's see what all the buzz is about. Okay, and here is Remix Volture and Buzzard in the box. Fairly nondescript cardboard brown box. It's not really a lot to report on the front, nor indeed on the back. As you can see, that's pretty much your lot. Truth be told though, I don't mind a simple box, as I often end up recycling the things anyway. That might sound sacrilegious to some, but it's just a question of space, isn't it? So, okay, and box is open. And first thing to note is that there's this rather generous little coupon from Toy Hacks, which you can redeem at their website, toyhacks.com, and it's just giving you 50% off the labels that they've done for Volture. So that's pretty exciting. Definitely going to be checking that out and seeing what they do. Often quite a big fan of Toy Hacks stuff. If you've never seen it before, they do, you know, all kinds of Autobot, Decepticon logos, but they do lots of stuff for vintage toys, new toys, everything. So definitely worth checking out, and I'm certainly going to see what it is that they've cooked up for this release today. Right, then you also get these two little polystyrene cases inside the cardboard box itself. Now they're sealed with tape all around, so we'll just go ahead and get them open. Right, and here we go. This is the first of the two releases. This is Volture. There you go, their attempt at Laserbeak. And of course, exactly the same, here is Buzzard, which is Buzzsaw. And here you can see why the outer packaging doesn't actually matter all that much. I mean, yeah, you know, a bit of polystyrene in the cardboard box, but then when you get inside, they've got these really, really cool plastic cases, which, if you're not familiar with them, because maybe you're not quite as old and done as I am, these are actually the kind of cassette cases from the 1980s of what it used to look like. I don't want to assume everyone just knows what they used to be like, or indeed still are. I mean, actually, I haven't bought a real cassette in ages. I was trying to think in preparation for this review if I still owned any, and I really don't think I do, but certainly have many memories of growing up listening to, you know, stuff like this and on a Walkman and what have you. So there you go. Anyway, concerns about my advancing years aside, this is looking really, really nice. It's got, just first thing here, this kind of molded detail actually on the plastic. This kind of circular pattern is actually molded in, which is kind of cool. Nice character artwork there as well for each of the toys. Slightly different for Laserbeak as well, for Volture, as we'll see. And then obviously if you turn it around, they've really carried through this idea of this looking like a proper cassette in its box. It's not absolutely identical to what an old cassette box would have looked like, but it's certainly not far off. And of course it opens in exactly the same way, just like that. And yeah, nice bit of detail, it has to be said. Really, really like that. I mean, they've even carried it through to the insert here as well, which of course, once you unfold it, is the instructions. In this case, there you go, for how to transform the toy, which is really, really quite cool. That's a nifty little feature and a nice callback to the actual kind of 80s cassettes as well. And you get the character card in there as well. So that's definitely a decent dose of nostalgia for anybody that grew up in the 80s or even before that, you know. But yeah, it looks really, really cool. Like what they've done with that. I like how they kind of tied in the packaging. I think that's a really nice touch, and it does kind of inspire you to keep these bits of the box at least, you know. I think I definitely will. And the tapes themselves look really, really quite nice. I believe they certainly look to be the correct size for an actual cassette. I did have their Jaguar, their take on Ravage as well, once upon a time, and actually, yeah, I believe that they are indeed the correct size and will fit possibly inside a real cassette player. Up to you if you want to give it a go or not. I've not confirmed that that's the case, and again, I don't actually have one in the house, I don't think. But yeah, they do look really, really quite cool, even up close. I mean, look, quite clearly it's a transformer, right? But anything like this that can, you know, has to kind of turn into this kind of rectangular object, sometimes I think that's actually harder than just, you know, things turning into cars and whatever else, because there's really not a lot that can be forgiven, you know, in a mode like this. But actually, I think they've done a very, very clean job of it overall. I mean, of course, if you turn the thing over, you'll see that it's just this kind of flat red and silver on the other side, but still I think that's quite successful. Just got a little tab popping up on my copy there. Not quite sure why that is, but I'm sure we'll figure it out as we go. Buzzard here looking similarly successful. Really like some of the detailing that they've got in here, so we'll take a closer look. But yeah, on the whole, I think they look pretty nifty. I mean, that's even down to some of the printed symbols on here, like the little A to indicate that this is the A side of the cassette, the actual cassette reel itself just in there, which kind of ties in nicely to this bit of molding. Then you've got the a kind of this bit here. It's obviously a little bit of an in-joke, you know, Ox and what have you, kind of giving a little in-joke about the company themselves, but it all looks like the kind of printing that you'd get on an actual cassette of this kind. So it's it's pretty cool. And then just moving over here, of course, you've got you know, kind of further detailing, all of which kind of recalls to life a real cassette. And again, the cassette wheel just there. I think they've done a really nice job with this. Really nice. And of course, you could even, you've got the little index thing here. This is typically where you would write on there what the cassette, you know, had on it. Particularly if you're doing mixtapes like I used to back in the day. God, I do feel old just looking at this. I can't even tell you. Yeah, there you go. So yeah, overall the look of them is really quite striking. Really think it's very cool indeed. The size of them is interesting though, because of course being the same size as a kind of a real world cassette, they are noticeably larger than the official Masterpiece attempt at these characters. As you can see, I mean, here you've got the official Masterpiece Laserbeak and Buzzsaw, and of course these are absolutely minuscule by comparison, and that's really because these are designed to actually be the same size as the Generation 1 versions, the Generation 1 cassettes, and so they can fit in the original Soundwave toy as well. And of course, if you've got the Walmart reissue of those, then you will have noticed that, or indeed the actual original 1980s version. You know, these are the exact same size as those first toys. So massive difference indeed, which is a weird one, as arguably I would say these are actually a little bit undersized for Masterpiece scale in their bird modes, but these are going to turn out to be quite large, I suspect, but we'll get to that in just a minute. But it's interesting to see two very different takes on these characters all the same. I mean, really, just to show you what I mean with that, again, you've got the Ocular Max toy just here, the Masterpiece just here, and then just to bring him in, this is the original Laserbeak toy, the 1984 version. All this is actually a reissue to tell the truth, but there you go. And you can see, yeah, same size on these two guys. And I always felt like that was an interesting but ultimately weird choice, as you know, again, with the official Masterpiece Laserbeak and indeed the Ravage and all of the rest of them, they always felt like they were just that bit too small to go with Masterpiece scale. I know that, you know, they'll often kind of claim that everything in Masterpiece scale fits to robot mode, but there have been a couple of exceptions. Ultra Magnus was one, and indeed these cassettes are clearly another. So the choice then for Ocular Max to go so large to make these real world scale is an interesting one, but if anything, it maybe takes things too much the other way. We'll take a look at, as I say, at the bird mode scale in just a bit, but anyway, there you go. You can see a comparison of the three toys. And for completeness sake, here you go, similar story with Buzzsaw. You've got Ocular Max, Masterpiece, and then the Generation 1 toy as well, which of course originally was packaged with the G1 Soundwave, and so, you know, definitely a favourite of mine in that regard. Now, speaking of Soundwave, here is the Masterpiece toy, as you can see, and of course, you know, the cassette door can open, you can pop the Masterpiece cassettes inside and then close it up. And indeed you can fit the Generation 1 cassettes in there as well, given that they're the same size, but that's not quite true with the Ocular Max tapes. Case in point right here, there's literally no way that is fitting into that, right? It's just not going to happen. So it does look a little bit funny in that regard. I mean, you would need a much larger Soundwave in order for that to take place, probably, you know, life-size Soundwave ultimately. But it is interesting. I mean, with FansToys bringing out their own take on Soundwave and indeed all of the cassettes at some point, it'll be interesting to see what scale they go for, but it's definitely quite a stylistic choice for Ocular Max to have done these at real world scale. I like what they've done. I think it's you know, it's clever, but I do think that it has a few compromises as well, so interesting to see. Ultimately though, the success of these guys is going to be all about those bird modes, so let's go ahead and get them transformed up. And so here are Vulture and Buzzard in their bird modes, and transformation-wise, that was really quite clever. A couple of twists and turns here and there that really surprise along the way, but actually it's really very simple. You know, it's quite elegant in its solution in terms of how they transform, and I think, you know, there's really nothing there to kind of worry anybody in terms of complexity or anything like that. It's very, very straightforward. And it has to be said that the result that it leaves you with is also quite elegant. I mean, they're certainly the most, I don't want to say lifelike, is that the right word to use? You know, in terms of how they look in their bird forms, but, you know, certainly the kind of most, I suppose, realistically moving birds that we've had out of these characters in any particular toy form so far. I mean, look, I'm not an ornithologist, as you know, but this thing does kind of move and pose, I guess, like a real-world bird would. I mean, we'll cover off posability, you know, in a bit more detail in just a minute, but there is a kind of lifelike quality to it. There's something just about the way that it kind of handles itself and is put together that, I don't know, it feels like something that could exist in nature, even though it's obviously a robot and it's made of metal and, you know, whatever else. It feels like that kind of real-world bird form, you know? Either way, though, there's a lot to like about the look of these things. I mean, again, they're probably the most accurate to the actual kind of cartoon model that we've seen, even more than the official Masterpieces, and we'll do a comparison in just a minute. But that really, I guess that's taking into account the scale of these guys. You know, they are a lot larger, there's a lot more to play with. And so, you know, I guess realistically they've given themselves a decent stab at being able to do that. But they have made the most of it as well. I mean, it just looks, yeah, I mean, quite breathtaking, really. I mean, look, I don't want to get ahead of myself, but that's exceptionally clean from every angle, right? Like, there's not really a lot to quibble about there in terms of, you know, tape bits or unfortunate angles or anything like that. It does look pretty spot on to my eye, I've got to say, compared to the animation model. I think they've done a really, really nice job with this. So I guess it's a question of the kind of accurate aesthetic plus the articulation all adding up to, I don't know, just make it feel quite impressive straight off the bat. It does feel well made and quite solid as well, both of them. I mean, the joints feel nice. There's a little bit of give in some of the areas, but really overall it's fine. Quite a bit of die cast going on in areas such as the feet as well, and you know, quite a lot in the main body. So it's got that kind of little bit of weight to it as well, and you know, a lot of people will be really happy to see that. And yeah, just overall I don't know, it feels very impressive, as I say. The paint is pretty nice too, like where it's applied on areas such as the wings, it comes across as very sharp, you know, decent coat on there as well. You know, I really like what they've done there, and I think, you know, that looks really, really nice. You know, elsewhere, stuff like the silver paint looks nicely applied. Generally speaking, they're pretty nicely finished. I do have this sort of little mark just on there on my Laserbeak, which is a little bit strange. It's the only area that it seems to appear like that. I don't know what that is, just a little bit of paint rub or something on there. But, you know, overall the finish is really, really good. Actually, I have just clocked that there's a little bit of gunk or something just on the wing of my Buzzsaw as well, so that's a little bit annoying. Now, it might seem like an obvious point, but the heads on these guys are really, really cool too. Quite simple in terms of detail, but certainly accurate to the source material. This is, of course, Buzzsaw just here. The paint is really good, actually, for such a small little thing. Now, it does have a moving beak, as you can see, although they're quite stiff, actually, I got to say. And just on the top here, there is even, if you can get it open, it's quite small, a little camera just inside their heads, as befits their appearance in the cartoon, of course. And I got to say, the paint application of the little red spot inside there is very appreciated. That's the kind of thing, actually, I've started to rely on Ocular Max a little bit for, and not something that everybody would have done. Similar story on Vulture, of course. He's also got that little camera up the top there, and of course, you just fold that away, you can see the rest of the head. And yeah, the eyes look maybe a slightly different color to me. Maybe it's just the contrast with the orange, I don't know, they might be the same actually, but nice little sort of yellow color on there, almost kind of greeny yellow, and of course a silver beak on this guy, but it looks really, really good. Also worth me mentioning the red paint on here, which is really nicely applied, very even as well, decent coat on there, looks really, really good and nice and shiny. Not to focus on his bum, but you can see just here that there's some little stickers inside the rear of the thrusters just there, and that's obviously to emulate the look of the thrusters kind of going off. I don't know about that, I've got to be honest. It's a nice touch in some ways, and it does add a little bit of colour, but just maybe looks a tiny bit gimmicky to my eye, but it's fine. So let's talk about articulation, shall we? I mean, other than the beak, of course, you've got quite good articulation at the, I say quite good, very good, at the neck just there. So that's one joint, and a ball joint just lower down here as well. So that moves all around. And then you've got a little hinge just inside. So, you know, even just in that neck, that's a huge amount of posability in just one area. Really, really something. You've then got a hinge just inside the body, just here, which can kind of fold forward like so. So again, coupled with the neck joint, it means that, you know, there's quite a nice kind of hunch to them, which is pretty cool. Lots going on with the wings, as you might expect, and they can move back and forth quite a bit. Only back to there, actually. So if you are looking to get them to kind of go further back, as if they might do kind of in full flight, then no, that won't work, unfortunately, but they will go further forward due to transformation. There is a kind of rotating joint, just like that, which again is due to transformation. There's a hinge just there, you can see, on a little pin, and another one just in the middle. So, you know, quite a decent, you know, bit of articulation just there. And yeah, overall, I think there's enough. I think there's, you know, everything you would kind of need. It would be nice if maybe they could hinge back a little bit further than they do, but really it's fine. Right, coming around to the underside, you've got a little ball joint just here, what I guess is his hips. I don't know, I'm not really that anatomically versed in the world of birds, but I'm going to say hips. So that can go in and out, and then of course back and forth a little bit as well. You've then got a little, just a hinge joint which moves forward like so. I'm going to call it his knee, there you go. Someone can correct me with the proper terminology in the comments, I'm sure. You've then got in his claws, just a little hinge just here, for the sort of rear part of the claw, and then two hinges at the front, so like that. So you can actually kind of grip. I would say this is where there's the most give in any of the joints, is in the legs, particularly this one here, actually, this pin. You can see if I just sort of push a little bit, there you go, it just flops down ever so slightly. Doesn't feel the most stable, and even at that knee actually as well, as you know, just a little bit of give. It's fine, and it will definitely hold a pose, but they're not the tightest joints, certainly. Anyway, all that articulation adds up to quite a lot, and indeed these guys are quite a bit of fun to pose, and they do hold really nicely as well, despite, you know, a couple of my small comments about the legs. And yeah, I think it's good. Honestly, I really think that they're good overall. They've as I say, pose nicely, look really dynamic. They look great on a shelf. What else can I say? They look really great on a shelf. I mean, even past that, I think there's a lot of fun to be had with these guys, just, you know, posing them up amongst some kind of real world objects as well. You know, just having, you could kind of have them anywhere in your house, you know, and just kind of have them amongst some of your household items, and I think that would look quite good fun as well. I think they are, as I say, a lot of fun overall. One other thing that I do think is quite clever is the way that these wings kind of hold together on the sides, in that they're not clipped or anything like that. You know, there's no tab or peg or anything like that. So they, you know, obviously that's how they come together for transformation. But as you can see, if I just push them closer, they just kind of suddenly end up kind of almost magnetically coming together like that and sealing. And I think it's kind of cool, actually. And it means that when you do fold the wings up like that for posing, that they kind of slide against each other in this kind of cool design. I think it's really nice, really nice. It's certainly a little bit unique, let's say. So yeah, all told, I kind of dig these guys actually in their bird modes. I think one thing is that they do definitely feel a little bit standalone though. So if you are looking for them to kind of line up, you know, as part of a Masterpiece display, size-wise, there are some compromises for sure. So yeah, I think it's when you bring in stuff like the official Masterpiece toys, just here, that you start to see the sort of major size discrepancy that's going on here. Now, again, if I'm honest, these guys, the official toys, are undersized. You know, they're too small for Masterpiece scale. And that, again, is on account of Takara making, I guess, an interesting choice in terms of play value, you know, to have them the same size as the G1 figures, you know, in order to have that kind of cross-play pattern. But it does mean that in terms of actual, you know, robot mode scale, or bird mode scale in this case, they are undersized. Whereas Ocular Max have kind of done the opposite, you know, by making their guys scale with real-world cassettes, but then as a comparison, you know, they just end up being too big in bird mode, as we'll see. So it's kind of the actual real scale of these guys, these characters, if anything, should be somewhere in between these two versions. So I'm not going to lie and say that that's not slightly frustrating, that we can't get like a really nice design like these guys just in the right size, you know. It's kind of, if you could just have it somewhere in between, they would have nailed it, frankly. I mean, look, maybe scale isn't such a factor for you, but I'm mentioning it because it will be for some people, no doubt. And it is really interesting because, again, when you bring in the G1 toy, again, you'll see what I mean about the Masterpiece design. That it is actually, if anything, in this bird mode, it comes off as slightly smaller than the original design. Just on account of having to fit in cassette mode, but still kind of, if anything, pack in more engineering. So it's a weird one. It's a weird one. I get what Ocular Max were going for in terms of size with this, and purely from a play value perspective, it's really, really worthwhile, and you do end up with a very cool design at the same time. But I know a lot of Masterpiece collectors will just want the thing to be the right size ultimately. Still, there's no denying that they do look pretty cool, and again, if I just bring in the original Buzzsaw here, you can see that trio as well. And certainly, in terms of the level of detail, the play value, the posability, all of these things are greatly enhanced from the previous versions we have seen. I do still love the official Masterpiece toys because I think they are little engineering marvels, and they're cute as a button too, but there is a lot to like about these Ocular Max takes as well. I don't know, I guess this is ultimately why I ended up parting ways with Jaguar in the end, because I love the design, the articulation, everything else. It's the best looking Ravage toy that I've seen, genuinely, hands down. It's just too big. If they'd have just made it not even half the size, just like 2/3 of the size maybe, I don't know. Certainly smaller than it is. And it's the same story with these guys in my book. I love them, and actually I could sort of see myself hanging on to these just because of how nice they are. But they are just very, very sizable. I will say that they do look really cool with Masterpiece Soundwave here. Like that actually, just as a sort of, a solitary display on a shelf somewhere would look awesome. Really though, it's once you get Soundwave into his robot mode that the disparity becomes all the more apparent, and quite clearly he's going to have to start hitting the gym pretty hard if Laserbeak is going to keep growing like that, let's just say. It just reminds me of one of those photos of like dog owners, when you see when they had the dog when it was a puppy and it was tiny, and now it's like the size of a bear and they could barely lift it anymore. It's just like one of those. Anyway, the point is that, yeah, realistically, they're a great standalone item. I really love them for that. But if you're looking for a superb, in scale Laserbeak and Buzzsaw to go with your Masterpiece collection, I'd say, being generous, it's dubious if that works or not. Do you know what I mean? It's from afar. I mean, even then, it does look a bit silly, let's be honest. That said, there's still a lot to love about them, and actually maybe it does work for you in terms of display. If you don't mind them being slightly oversized or whatever else, they look great. And actually in terms of style, they fit really nicely with the, stuff like MP36 and whatever else. They kind of got that cartoonish look going on. So, you got to like that. I guess ultimately then it's up to you whether this works for you or not, as what you do get is a pair of really, really good looking toys, nicely articulated, tons of fun, nicely finished, all of that good stuff. They're just a bit big at the end of the day. I mean, look, he looks like he's about to fly off with Megatron, really. So it's quite funny. It makes me laugh, but they do look great, and I can't wait to take some pictures of them, let's be fair. Let's just say that Soundwave is going to have a bit of a surprise when he ejects Laserbeak next time, that's all. Ultimately though, I'm not looking to comment any more on the size, as really it is what it is, and besides that, there is loads to love about them. There's, they're fun, they're playable, they're posable, they transform really nicely, they look great in both modes, they're really well made. There's a lot to like. As I say, they're great little figures, and as a standalone effort, I think they work excellently. It may be that actually you fancy having these guys, on a little shelf somewhere in your house as a kind of fun nod to, your love of Transformers or whatever. I think that would look really, really awesome, actually. That's the kind of thing that personally I'm more likely to do, is, to just have them as like a standalone item somewhere with some household, stuff or whatever. I think that would look really, really quite cool. Whether they work as part of a Masterpiece collection, that's up to you. Do you know what I mean? That's eye of the beholder stuff, really. For me, as I say, they are a little bit oversized, but still great release overall. And in that regard, I feel very comfortable saying that this is a very definite toot. So that's Ocular Max, Volture and Buzzard. Now I'll put a link to TF Source's listing for these guys in the video description, and I'll be able to get the full photo review up on their blog soon. Otherwise, that's it from me, so don't forget to drop me a like if you enjoyed today's video, and have a great rest of your day. TTFN.